Thank you very much for joining me. I'm here today with Nathaniel Chua, an act therapist living in the Philippines. Nathaniel, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I've been a fan of your work that you've been posting so much of on Facebook. I'm a big fan. I've been following your posts on Facebook on how you're using the ACT matrix, and when I saw a couple of your videos, I knew right away that I had to get you on for a conversation because I'm excited to see what you've been doing with the Matrix. Thank you very much for meeting with me today.
Thank you. I count this a privilege, Jacob. Uh, it's an honor to be with you as the grief tricks maker. So it's awesome
Yeah,
to see
thank you
that
very
video.
much.
I use
For
that with my clients.
Well, that's wonderful. For those of you who don't know what Nathaniel's referring to, I made a tool called the Grief Tricks early on. Actually, it was maybe 5 years ago now, when I was just kind of starting out with the Matrix, and it seems to be fairly popular. But I'm glad you've been able to use that with actual clients and found it to be effective. I assume.
Yeah, it's a the matrix is actually for me kind of like an overhead camera, so you can see what's going on with your life and what aspects of your life you've taken for granted for a while, like 'cause we're so busy, dealing with getting rid of our difficult thoughts and feelings. So that's how it works, and it's done a lot, not just to my clients, but most especially to my life. I started off applying it to my life. So
Yeah, I want to know more about kind of how you're working with the Matrix. Maybe we can just kind of start here in this place. Maybe we can start just kind of talking about what your work is in general, like the kinds of clients that you work with, the kinds of clients that you see, um, just any kind of setting, the setting that you work in. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
well, I started off working from a, let's say, church environment because I graduated with a master's degree earned from a seminary. Okay, so and I ended up doing my uh, practicum work in a place where uh, the sort of a pastor was listening to phone-in questions every night around. He's, God bless his soul, he's passed away already. Anyway, so um, and he uh, uh, he put me in a place where I meet individuals and couples and sometimes families, mostly individuals and couples. So I ended up, accidentally doing individuals and couples, because in the Philippines it's hard to really make a decent living just doing one thing. If I were just to focus on depression, that's it. All my clients will be working on their depression, but that's hard to live with, live by in terms of income. So I have to learn very quickly how to deal with a lot of issues because of that practicum work, and I count that as a real opportunity for me to hone my skills. And I find it interesting because I don't really get stuck in one mode and another or another. So I'm able to deal, you know, it kind of breaks the monotony sometimes. I'm not saying it's boring, but it gives you a new challenge, a new setting, a new type of I have to adjust my thinking. Speaking of couples, I think those two matrices that you saw were about couple therapy.
Yes, yes, they were, and that's actually why I was so excited to see you because I really am interested in people who are using the Matrix differently, than the standard thing that you always see. And so couples work, there's a little bit that has been done with the Matrix in the area of couples work. I have one that I use sometimes myself, but um, just I see what you're saying. That idea of doing individual work and then switching to couples work, it helps break up the day too, versus having, 3 or 4, 5, 6 individual sessions, all in one day. If you've got a couple session thrown in there, it's just it's I find it refreshing because I do a lot of that couples work as well. Um, so good. So let's talk too about kind of how you learned the matrix and how did you start integrating it into your practice.
Okay, I always had act upside down because in 2018, I think, or 2017, I was, just in the garden, watering my garden, and then I often want to take that time to listen to some podcasts online. So I ended up listening to two British psychologists. I started my practice way back. No, not way back. It's 2009. So uh, this was kind of a second career for me. I used to be a businessman for the first 20 years of my career. So I was watering the garden, my usual routine, and then so I listened to these two British professors, and they were talking about mindfulness. So and I've heard about it, but I didn't really mind it because I was trained in the psychodynamic uh, model of therapy. So I they began citing study after study how mindfulness really works, how they can find, because there was some skepticism. I kind of sensed that when they were probably starting with learning all this mindfulness bit. So, and then I went into studying, getting books, about mindfulness and all that. And then I ended up doing a lot of meditations in my therapy work, and then it did help my clients. But for me, it's kind of like uh, I'm not really a big meditation guy. So, and I sense what Steve. I don't know if I'm quoting him right, but Steve Hayes would say things like, not everybody's a meditator. So, and through the course of my readings, I always come across citations of Stephen Hayes and ACT and the other Kirk Strassel and Kelly Wilson. So, so I got interested, and the first book I got was the first edition of the original ACT book, and
Yeah,
I
the
said,
blue one.
I used I think the ebook, so I don't really look at the cover much,
Sure.
but it
But it
took me
just said
about.
ACT, right? It says acceptance commitment therapy or something like that.
Yes, yes, it was published in 1999. So when I read that, I said I thought this was going to be in English. It was so scholarly, very difficult to read. But so I said I can't understand this. It's too difficult. My first language is not English. I'm Filipino. I was born Chinese, born in the Philippines. So anyway, so I had to drop it and continue with the meditations, and then still coming up with citation after citation about ACT. And then what I ended up doing is Googling ACT for Dummies.
Mm-hmm.
And the first book that really got me hooked into ACT is the Get Out of Your Mind into Your Life.
Yes.
It was very well written. It wasn't really too prosaic. There's some challenge in it, but at the same time, it's understandable. And luckily, the second edition of the original act book is more
Hmm.
understandable.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm not sure if I have the two copies right, but that's what I read the second act book, and then the first act workshop that I attended was Act Immersion by
Oh,
Stephen
really?
Hayes. And again, I said I thought this was gonna be in English. I said, I said,
That's a fairly advanced course to jump right into.
well, Stephen Hayes was the only guy I knew. I never learned about Russ Harris. I mean, at that time, that was 2019 when I was starting off. And, I was kind of torn between using my usual stuff and using ACT, but I said, I want to introduce this to my clients. So I started off very, like Russ Harris would usually say that when you start off with ACT, you'd usually come up with one metaphor after another, one exercise after another. So it was kind of disjointed that way. And then, but I couldn't help it but share this because that book, Get Out of Your Mind, really blew my mind. So, and there are some things I was struggling with in my first 9 years of practice that act really helped me get over. You know, my anger for one. All right, so, and then not get over, but live with. Okay, that's the wrong term. So, and then and just on the a few sessions in with the workshop, with he introduced the matrix uh, in act immersion. So it's, okay, and then somebody, a good soul in ACBS, gave me, I don't know who or he or she or they are, um, but sent me a Russ Harris Act for Beginners free workshop. Uh, it's a Filipino guy. I don't know if it was from him or somebody else, but he said it was from ACBS. So I was very thankful. I got to understand ACT more, starting with the ACT for Beginners class with Russ Harris. And then uh, I started using the choice point. And then, when I was meeting with a group of ACT therapists here in the Philippines, one of the leader of the group, actually, the facilitator of the group, I mentioned I used a choice point. Oh, you could also try the Act Matrix. Yeah. Well, okay. I put it on the shelf for a while, and then came back to it after a while because I do know about the Act Matrix. But when I saw Kevin Polk's video, I said, "Oh, it made sense." The thing with the does the anger go away forever? Does the fear go away forever? And does the anxiety go away forever? So, uh, and then I started reading the Act Matrix books, the two books, uh, and then started. I remember when I was doing the Act Immersion workshop with Stephen Hayes, I always ask questions about couples. How do we do Act for couples? How do Because I'm working with couples, but this is all individual. And it took me a while. It's now 2022. So it's only in 2022 that I got to incorporate the matrix with my couples work. And plus, uh, I got it out of Stephen Hayes, the two couples therapies that he suggested I can study. It was a question he answered during the workshop that he said EFT, emotion focused therapy, and IBCT, integrative, yeah, integrative behavioral couples therapy. So I said, okay, I already know EFT. Let me look at IBCT. And then if you saw, I mean, you saw the two matrices that I did. The second one, which is about conflict, I incorporated what I learned from IBCT there. And also some of my old practices before I even came into, I was used to be in existential psychotherapy. So, uh, and a lot of emotion focus also. So some of that, uh, you know, was from IBCT. Some of that was also me doing because this is a science. RFD is kind of a science telling me that, oh, that's why that was working with my old clients in my first 9 years. Oh, that's how it works. So it's all in the language. It's all in the you know framing. So if you notice, I talked about, well, this side, your this upper right hand corner, your partner or spouse might not be seeing all the time. What he sees is the angry you on the upper left hand. So I used to do that with clients even before I learned ACT. I said, well, I see you here, you're such a nice person. Does your partner ever see you like this? you know so yeah, there's a lot of vulnerability here. you know Maybe what your partner sees is something else. Just you're always angry, you're always nagging, you're always, you know, running away. So, yeah, and sorry, sorry if I'm talking too long.
No, no, no. This is perfect because what you're saying here is you were interested in ACT. You fell into the matrix work, really started just applying it. But one of the things that you're actually saying is you had to sort of build your own methods of working for the populations that you work with. and particularly because you work with couples, because I've worked with couples too, and at one point I was trying to do act with couples, like just straight act, and it wasn't really working for me. And there's a couple of books out, Act for Couples or Act with Love. Russ Harris has one. Um, in my opinion, Act just isn't there yet. It just really doesn't have a good um, complete cohesive model for couples work, which is why you do have to integrate other modalities like EFT or IBCT and other things in order to really be successful with couples, because it's just so complex. uh, the work, the dynamics between all those people in the room. And so you right away you started just basically molding the act matrix in a certain way that has worked for you, and that's why I was very interested in your work. So that takes me to my next question, right? So what are some of like the changes or tweaks to the matrix that you've made, for couples or other client populations that you work with?
Well, some of it is not really new because in the Act Matrix book, there are two of them that I read. One of them did talk about, when you do an away move, you get another away move in return, usually. So that was not original to me. But what a lot of, especially, well, I'm not being sexist here. I know there's a, but a lot of my male clients come to me who have spouses or who are in a committed relationship, uh, like longtime partners. They struggle a lot with uh, in, infidelity. All right, and that's the very first one that I published on YouTube. I've actually been doing it for maybe close to a year already, but luckily I found Zoom to be a cheap and easy way to publish it on YouTube. Uh, and I'm surprised that nobody ever did that. Uh, Coming from you, you're in the U.S., you have all the resources there. So I'm surprised nobody ever did a matrix that would help people with these with their urges. Because a lot of uh, I like just like you, I struggled with male clients who come to me as an individual and said, I want to be faithful to my wife, but when I see these girls that are just around Instagram or whatever, I can't help it. It's just like, can you do that? I mean, if there's a really beautiful girl there, and can you do that? So I struggled a bit. I was doing some of that, you know, act work. Can you disobey your mind? you know, I sent out an email to Stephen Hayes and said, "Oh, I have this client is having this issue about infidelity, and uh, because infidelity can come in many different forms right now. There are many different levels depending on the couple's limits. Um, so, uh, and actually, that those urges and the act matrix, I think I just came up with it about a few months ago because I was trying to figure out how can I put you know the values and the urges and because nobody really, I mean, as far as I know, I haven't seen urges put there on the lower left hand corner of the matrix. I don't know, there might be somebody else out there, but so I put it there. So uh basically it's just learning from the population that comes to me, and it's a real challenge for a lot of people, even in the same-sex relationships. There's a lot of ways to be unfaithful to your partner, not just an actual affair. So it's
Yeah, it's funny that you're bringing up this example because this exact thing that you're talking about led me to one of the innovations that I made to the Matrix, which is I don't always use toward and away anymore on the horizontal line. I've switched it out for survival and vitality. And Kevin Polk has also switched his horizontal label, independent of myself. But the reason I switched it out was because I was getting stuck with clients exactly like you described. There was this concept that sort of, in my opinion, sort of was breaking the matrix for me, and that was urges to um, engage in an affair or sexual encounter with somebody else other than your partner. Um, and I was just getting stuck with the language really for me, which was when I have an urge to do something or contact somebody or whatever. Um, what am I doing? The thing that I'm doing is not necessarily an away move. It's not helping me get away from that urge. Really, it's helping me sort of complete that urge. Um, it's like following through with it, and it's really not avoiding the urge, right? You're not trying to avoid it to get away from it. Um, you're almost moving toward that urge. So for me, it was hard. I couldn't really ever conceptualize it with the traditional matrix. And then the way that I conceptualize it now is on the horizontal axis, I have survival on the left hand side and vitality on the right hand side. And if we think of urges as a survival move or a survival function that we have, in other words, we're sort of biologically, uh, programmed is a strong word, but we have this inclination to have sexual desire, to want to notice, attractive features in people or whatever. And then if we can kind of recognize that as simply a part of our self, a natural part of ourself, a piece of our biology, something that has come from us that we've evolved since way back. And it's not necessarily something that we need to follow through with, but it is something that we can recognize and notice and kind of hold gently and come to that acceptance and compassion around those urges. And then still, uh, you know, make moves that are important to us, so that move us toward a sense of vitality or what we value. It allows us to be compassionate towards the urges. It also allows us to be compassionate towards our overt behavior and not think, "Oh, I'm such a dirty, disgusting, dog for thinking that this thing or for wanting this
Yes,
other person." Right?
yes,
I'm a terrible partner. I'm a terrible husband.
yes, yes,
'Cause I even had a thought that I wanted to, sleep
yes.
with somebody else. Much more compassionate. That's what I assume that's kind of what you're trying to foster as well.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I saw that video. Actually, it's one of the videos that I watch over and over again. I didn't know it was you, so thank you for sharing that. The satisfaction, relief, survival, or uh, vitality, right? Or something. Yeah. So yeah, I do use that. And what the thing about urges is, okay, it's like you said that, there's the urge and then the judgment over the urge. And so kind of like being able to see that, like diffusion, trying to distance yourself from those urges, that you contain those urges, and then comes the judgment over the urges, noticing all that. So that's how uh, it helps the client uh, notice that as a function of your body. uh, it's not something, because when we're fused with the thought, we become the bad person. you know the urges are bad, so I need to relief to get some relief out of it. That's your term, right? Relief.
That's
uh
Kevin Polk, right? Kevin Polk does that relief
oh,
and
sorry.
satisfaction on the horizontal
Yes,
line. Yeah,
yes.
I'm familiar
And then,
with it though.
yeah, sorry. Okay, so w- one thing that we don't realize behind the urges is there is a question I got from uh, RFT. All right, that I ask clients who struggle with their urges. What if the original word was addiction? All right, so I don't use the word addiction. I use, what if these urges were signs that you can do something that matters instead of sleeping around. So instead of getting that drug, so, and because people, the matrix allows people to realize that these urges will never go, and you're in a losing battle. The rope metaphor, the tug of war metaphor. You're in a losing battle. You You're at war with your own mind, with your own urges. And one thing that people don't realize is how much time is being wasted on trying to get rid of these urges, trying to get relief from the urges. So, uh, and it'll never go. In fact, once you do it, and then you get into that negative feedback loop, oh, then you're really a pervert because you just spent an hour in the bathroom watching porn, you know, instead of, doing something that could move you towards the life you want or being the person you want to be. So that our RFT question, that framing question of, I don't know what I can't remember. I think this is uh, I know hierarchical framing. I'm still learning RFT. In fact, I learned RFT very much from Dr. Matthew Villat. He's a consultant of mine. He's a good friend. So he's such a nice person, and I asked him questions about RFT, and I went through his workshop also, and it was really a great help. And he asked me to read the book Mastering the Clinical Conversation. So that really helped me. So, his favorite metaphor is he uses the soup metaphor. You're not gonna get rid of the salt in the soup. You just need to pour in more ingredients. So I think the matrix allows a client to kind of sit back and look from a top and see, oh, what is there? What is another question to put it is, are you missing something here? If you spend so much time trying to get rid of your urges, how much money have you spent on pornography, or or even paying women to get rid of these urges? Have they ever gone? I mean, maybe when you're 80, and you're having physical problems already, but that's a long way. And meantime, I like what Steve Hayes wrote in Get Out of Your Mind is, the clock is every tick of the clock is mocking you. Yeah.
Mm, that's
So
really nice. Yeah, I like that. Um,
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
And I love what you're saying, right? The matrix, very flexible tool you can apply to all kinds of problems. I also think that I know that I get stuck a lot with clients. There's challenges that I run into. Are there certain challenges that you've encountered when using ACT or the ACT matrix, like places you've gotten stuck where you're thinking, oh geez, what do I do here next? What do I do next? Do you ever have those kinds of experiences?
Oh yeah, a lot, especially at the start. It's very kind of like mechanical at the beginning. I kind of use a lot of act metaphors. In fact, sometimes I even try to have a cheat sheet, a little exercise I haven't memorized. Because I was so excited to share it, because it was an eye opener to me learning about acts. And then when I'm always excited when I started with the act matrix. I would introduce it right away, uh, but as I get along and I learned about RFT more, and one of the videos that Dr. Vilat showed in his workshop for RFT was an interview with Emily Sandos. And they were talking about, well, if you learn RFT, you could do acts just like when you're talking to someone, just like when you're doing psychodynamic therapy or even existential therapy. I said, oh, really? You can do that? So as I learned more about RFT, I learned how to kind of build some of the rapport more, take some time. And then when, I see the moment where the act matrix could crystallize everything, kind of make them realize, because it's hard to get act you know, even us as professionals, or, what more a client, you know, to kind of just think it in their mind. Oh, it's values or something. I'm missing here. So the matrix kind of makes it a lot clearer, and I've seen that work in couples After I do the act matrix, it just becomes so simple to them. It becomes so self-evident. Like, oh, really? Oh, okay. So that's what I was doing. So I've seen some miracles happen with the matrix, but I've learned not to do it right off the bat. Uh, but I can do it also. I mean, it doesn't. I'm not saying it's a hard and fast rule. You can do it at the start. You can do it. Depends on how you see the client is responding and what do you think. What do you think the client would? But right now, I think for me, I kind of introduce it towards the middle, or somewhere during the middle, when I think they're more or less kind of getting stuck with some of the repeated, when we always have to do creative hopelessness over and over. So maybe the matrix could help here. So
Yeah, that's interesting. You've inspired me. I'm gonna try to start integrating it a little bit more in my couples work because I haven't done it in a long time with couples.
which one? The
But
matrix?
the Matrix, yeah.
Oh, I see.
But I can kind of see what you're saying. There's spaces in my couples work where I think
uh,
maybe I should bring it in, but then I don't ever really do it. um, but I think I am going to try to make it my mission to start integrating it just as an experiment and see what that does for the work in the room with certain couples that I'm seeing.
yeah.
And I'll reach out to you if I have any questions. I'll I'll say, hey Nathaniel, I'm getting stuck here with this couple. Um, if maybe you can help me out. Um, but
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
thank you. I'll watch your videos again and try to kind of continue. Um, there's a lot of space there. Like I was saying, you could be the guy. You could be the couples act matrix guy if you wanted to be.
Really? Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm surprised that this is the first time I'm getting feedback that it's actually new to a lot of people. Uh, so I thought people, some therapists out there in the U.S. would be doing this, but I never thought, because, yeah, looking back at some of the emails that I get from Kevin Polk's group, I don't see a lot of couples there, but there is part of that book where he talks about.
that book has a section on couples work, and then the blue book
Yeah.
has I think a chapter on couples or relationships, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it, right? So that's all that's been written about it. So there's still
Mm.
a lot
I
there.
think the urges would be something new. I
Hmm.
think because I've
I
I've
think so
never.
too,
Yeah.
because I get a ton of male clients who are coming to me specifically for um, trying to reduce pornography usage, trying to reduce masturbation. They come to me with this idea like I have a problem. I'm addicted to pornography or I'm addicted to sex. And I don't know why they gravitate towards me. I'm not the I'm not advertising myself as that kind of therapist, but um, I get a lot of clients every year with that particular concern. Um, and it's all about those urges, like you're saying, and trying to build some compassion and that helping them understand that they're human beings.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one thing about why I'm so interested in this, because this is, I don't know how many people will watch this, but this is a confession. I struggled with it myself at certain points in my life. So when the client hears that, oh, my therapist actually struggled with that in the past. So wow, that's, they think they're abnormal. So, but there's no, the thing is, they're not as sensitive to the fact, okay, after you just spent a few hours paying a prostitute or something, trying to hide all this, another RFT question, is this worth all the effort? you know so it's that adaptive peak that you get into. So and when they realize that, they say, oh, I'm not alone. I mean, even my therapist struggled with that, with all the advent of technology. And that's why it means a lot to me, because you know Russ Harris would say, sometimes when you talk about creative hopelessness or confronting the agenda, there's that feeling of loss, time lost, opportunities lost. uh, you know Someone would tell me, well, people recover from depression anyway. without therapy. Well, yeah, but somewhere along the line, that person could have went to the hospital because he tried to kill himself, or somewhere along the line, before he recovered from that depression, is he could have wasted so much time out of his life. And you know the clock is ticking, as I said. So that's what I feel whenever I talk about it. I said I spent so much time on that myself, and it's such a waste. It's such a and it's painful to feel. You know,
That's right. That's
yeah,
right. Especially like an issue like this, like you're saying, it's the action, which then there's some shame around it that occurs, which means clients are more likely to cover it up or try to hide it, which causes them to do other things that are disconnecting to their relationships or people that they care about. And then it becomes just like this big like house of cards that's it's constantly on the verge of collapsing, and you have to keep patching it up everywhere. Uh, and it can consume a person's life. Um, well, beautiful. And so I think I know we're coming up towards the end of our time here, so I've got just a couple more questions for you before we disconnect. I think a lot of my audience is unfamiliar with the mental health world in the Philippines. I just want to get your thoughts on what are things like there in terms of the mental health world. Willingness to engage in therapy, attitudes towards mental health struggles, advocacy, things like that. What's going on in the Philippines?
well, I think we've gone a few some steps forward. I think with a lot of the um, media, mainstream media, and social media uh, discussions about mental health. Some celebrities here are starting to share as part of their lives, unafraid to tell people that I've been depressed. Uh, you know, you know, I remember Stephen Hayes wrote or said something like, I don't know if he wrote it, that Lincoln was depressed, but he's still Lincoln. So it's not about getting rid of depression; it's living with it and creating the most, let's say, powerful, most meaningful, purposeful life available to you with all of these, uh, um, with what Stephen Hayes would use, the hell of your own history, you know. So, uh, and I'm I'm still hopeful because there's only a handful of. I'm not sure how many ACT therapists are out there here in the Philippines. I have a group of ACT therapists who connect with Jason Loma. I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly. Um, and it's a small group, but uh, you know, I'm I'm really advocating for in the future. Maybe hopefully we change uh, some things about how we train our psychologists here. Um, I think it's similar to what Stephen Hayes. Sorry, he's he's Dr. Stephen Hayes. I don't want to call him like a friend. Anyway, but he's kind enough to do an interview for with me, and he said it's recent. Some of his recent work is all about let's stop sorting people, because that's how psychology is here still. There's a lot of awareness, but there's still a lot of that sorting people. And I couldn't understand Stephen Hayes when he talks about the ergodic theorem and all that. And he writes articles. When he talks and he writes, I know it's English, but it doesn't sound like English. Understandable. Anyway, it sounds Greek. Anyway, so uh, and the way the educational system is set up, and I finally ended up hearing Stephen Hayes in one of his interviews mention about the end of average. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with the concept. Yeah.
Yeah, Todd Rose. And when I read that, I quickly understood what Stephen Hayes was talking about you know let's stop sorting people. Let's change the system where we empower people. Putting people in one class, giving them a certain amount of time to finish everything. Giving them a set number of courses to take. Let's try, personalize things. Credentialing instead of, you know, awarding them with titles. That's why I hate titles. When my clients come to me, I said, just call me Nathan. Period. Don't call me nothing. I mean, just I'm Nathan. I'm just here with you, journeying through life. I struggle with the same struggles as you. Sorry, I don't wanna be judging titles, but sorry. Sometimes I get carried away. That's the angry part of me, anyway. So I'm not. I wasn't very aware, so I get carried away with my emotions too. So yeah, and when I read that book, it really made me open my eyes and how much, uh, student debt is a big problem in your country, right? Because the people have to go through and to learn the history behind that is really so, you know, uh, eugenics is behind that. Wow. So uh, we've, you know, you know, every year we celebrate lawyers here who pass the board exams. But for every four people, there's one there who didn't pass. Who's going to be condemned to a life of, you know, being considered second tier. I mean, where you're just sorting people. You're not empowering people. You know, and unfortunately, people don't think that way. It's a very essential type of thinking when you read that book. Instead of contextual, the jaggedness principle and uh, pathways principle. And if we can create an educational hiring system that honors our individuality, just like the old days before the Industrial Revolution, I mean, that would be ideal. That would be fantastic. That would be the world I think I want to see us create in contextual behavioral science. Um,
Hey, that's beautiful. I think you have a bright future ahead of you, just obviously as a clinician, but also as a member of ACBS. You should really think about joining some committees if you're not already a member of some ACBS committees or the board at some point in the future, running for member at large or one of these other positions that comes up, because your voice is very valuable, um, and I'm very honored to have spoken with you today. You got
thank you,
a
thank you,
lot of good
Jacob.
stuff.
Hearing you, I mean, most of my material is coming from your country, and I'm kind of awed by having to speak with somebody in the U.S. with all the resources that are available to you, and you know, I appreciate those comments. I mean, it's fun, but it's also a lot of reading and a lot of, you know, thinking through what you read and knowing, trying to sort it out. If I use that word, sort it out, which ones you can take and which ones you actually live by. You know, some things you can take with a grain of salt. Some things you actually are very passionate about, and that's what I want. I want a world that empowers, just like Stephen Hayes said, not rather than, put people to one side and say, you know, that's where you go. You don't go anywhere else. That's where you stop. Yeah.
Well, why don't we take some time to tell people where they can find you, a website or anything that you've got coming up that you want to point people towards. This is, just go ahead and let people know how can they see more of your work or reach out to you if they want to ask you anything or get in contact with you.
Well, my website is onelifeonly.net. All right. Um, I don't know how many Filipinos will see this, but I've done work with some Filipinos overseas, quite a few, and a lot of Filipinos married to Americans or people from Australia, Canada, wherever. So and I I've gone to a point where I've seen, if there's a new science out there that's better than what we're doing, I'll take it anytime. Uh, but so far, this is, I think, have been very useful to my life and also to my clients. Um, I've been able to expand the the work that I do because of ACT and the Matrix, and I'm also hoping for the Filipino community out there in the U.S. I have an opportunity that I have a project where I can be trained with Dr. Matthew Galat in Seattle, and if you're willing to support uh, this undertaking, I'd be very appreciative. And I have until November. If it doesn't come, well, that's fine. I can still talk to Matthew. But if uh, if that opportunity, if you have uh, the heart to see uh, some of the work I do here, and if you're willing to, let's say, support me in that endeavor, I'm glad to know that seeing Jacob here uh, being helped, maybe influenced in a way with the videos that I show. It's really very heartwarming, and it's really quite a surprise actually, because I never thought that somebody from your country would, you know, uh, learn something from me, little old me here in the Philippines. If you see my office, it's only, I don't know, it's 23 square meters. If you convert that into feet, I don't know how big that is. So it's a small office here in the Philippines, and I'm here because uh, I feel for those who have lost time in their lives, struggling with their minds, and ACT has really opened the doors for me, and I still do struggle. There's still some things I have to work on. We're all in the work. We're all a work in progress, like what I Steve and I discussed. So thank you, Jacob, for this opportunity. It's very much appreciated, and I hope we could be friends. Matthew's a friend. Uh, you know, we can. I don't know. We can collaborate, doing
Of
something
course.
together.
Yeah, if I'm ever in the Philippines, I'll let you know,
Yeah,
and vice versa. Of course, if you make it over here, um, I'm not
we
in
can
Seattle,
chat.
but
We can chat on Facebook. You
of course,
you
yeah,
you gave me a
we
chat.
already do.
So
Add me as a friend, and we'll connect on Facebook anytime. I'm always, always happy to connect with other fellow Matrix practitioners, of course, but also just any other good, human beings who want these things for the world that you want. I really enjoy your passion. Um,
thank you, Jacob.
um,
Yeah.
well, good. Well, I think we can leave it here for today. I'm gonna hit stop on the recording, and then